Well, hello there, meteorologist Austin Lowe on this Sunday rather. Joining me, thanks for joining me on First Alert Daily here. We're doing an addition just to talk about the severe weather risk. If you joined me this morning, we were talking about the possibility of some stronger storms, and we certainly have that on tap for today. Because of that, today and tomorrow, we do have a First Alert weather day that goes into effect this evening into the overnight hours and tomorrow morning. And that is because of the risk of damaging winds. We have an isolated tornado risk out there, and we also are going to be seeing this during a morning drive. Now, I know some folks don't have school next week, from what I understand, but there are still some communities that do have school. A lot of folks have to still go to work. So the First Alert weather day is in place because we're looking at a very similar setup to what we had just a couple of days ago on Thursday. And I think the coverage of showers and storms is going to be pretty similar, with an opportunity for severe weather. And it's not just us. Matter of fact, a lot of the nation under some sort of risk today. This is the outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. Basically, what this shows you is the amount of coverage these storms are going to be spreading over. So the higher the number, the higher the category, the more coverage of severe weather there is going to be. And you can see the orange shade. That is a enhanced risk, or a level 3 risk, that is centered across parts of the Mid-South and the Ohio Valley. This is where we have a pretty significant damaging wind and tornado risk today, as that's where the bit of the better upper level dynamics are, and that trough pivots to the north tomorrow and brings some significant severe weather, which I'll show you in just a moment, to the Delmarva area extending into the North and South Carolina. But do notice this was introduced this morning, this small little orange enhanced risk across parts of western Georgia, the Wiregrass of Alabama, and north of Interstate 10 in the western panhandle of Florida. We're also looking at this yellow shade, which is a slight risk, so not quite as high of severe weather, severe storm coverage in our area. So I'll zoom in a little bit closer. You can see just how close that enhanced risk is. A little too close for comfort. Once you start to see these level 3 risks or higher, it's usually a pretty good bet that you're going to see dangerous storms. So Troy, Dothan, even Crestview, north of Destin, again, Defuniak Springs along Interstate 10 and the panhandle of Florida, but it still creeps into areas like Blakely and Early County. And so if you're, say, even Chattahoochee to Donaldsonville, Colquitt, and Blakely, you're a little bit too close for comfort. Bottom line, we have a risk for severe weather this evening into the overnight hours, and then we have another opportunity for it area-wide tomorrow. Notice the level 3 risk is nowhere close to us, but it will be, the bigger threat will be to our north. We're still looking at an area-wide slight risk. That's the level 2. But this just updated this morning, and this is a moderate risk. That's a level 4 out of 5 risk of severe weather up north. And that's because of a pretty big potential for tornadoes extending from Raleigh to DC. And so we're going to be keeping our eyes on this severe weather risk, not just locally, but nationally as well. I do want to bring you back to home for just a moment. If you're planning any outdoor activities today, we'll get you through your forecast today, and then we'll dive into the severe weather risk. If you're joining me on the WCTV streaming app, I hope you're doing well today. If you're joining me on Facebook, feel free to ask questions if you have any. I'll try to get to answering them once we get toward the end of this stream. But here's the bottom line with today's weather. We have clouds already this morning, but it's not going to stop the sun from helping to warm us up at times. Partly sunny skies is what we'll call our afternoon across the Big Bend in South Georgia. And you can see this view courtesy WeatherStem over downtown Tallahassee. We're about 70 degrees with a nice southeast breeze around 10 miles per hour. Wouldn't be shocked to see those sustained winds get up to 15 this afternoon, and occasional gusts a bit higher. Thomasville, we're looking at 68 degrees with a south wind around 8 miles per hour. A lot more blue sky there for you. Let's check out another spot in South Georgia, the Bainbridge Boat Basin, 67 degrees, a south wind at 6 miles per hour. The view courtesy of WeatherStem. And our last WeatherStem cam I'll show you this morning is St. George Island, where it's not a bad day to be out on the beach. 68 degrees, southeast winds at 5 miles per hour. Starting to be that time where we need to apply that sunscreen a lot more frequently as the UV index gets a bit higher. It's a good day, I would say, to get out and enjoy the weather for the most part. If you liked yesterday's weather, today's going to be very similar. We're talking numbers in the low 80s for a lot of spots. So I would say it's definitely pool type of weather with partly sunny conditions, a nice breeze out there ahead of a pretty strong cold front that is going to bring those changes to our weather. And I'll point it out here. That's this blue line with an attached area of low pressure. This is the cold front. This is what is going to bring us a better chance for rain and storms over the next 24 hours. Also look to the north. If you have family, friends in Michigan, or maybe some of my Michigan viewers are tuning in on my Facebook page here, a pretty brutal storm getting underway. Had the snow this morning, but that's going to transition into what looks like a pretty dangerous ice storm across parts of northern Michigan. And so significant ice there, and then we're talking about feet of snow in the upper peninsula. That's all on the north side and the cold side of this storm system. Of course, we are not on that side. We are on the very warm and slightly muggy side of this storm system. So let's track this all out on Futurecast, showing you the local impacts. And as you notice, Futurecast throughout most of the day looks pretty quiet. We're not anticipating much in terms of wet weather anymore. There were a couple of showers on radar this morning across the eastern Big Bend closer to I-75 in the Suwannee Valley. Those have since lifted, and again, we're looking at just a partly sunny day. Can't rule out a stray shower. I have about a 10 to 20% chance of rain through the day, but again, I think most of us get through today without a drop of rain. That is until we get to dinner time. I have Futurecast stopped at 7 o'clock here, and I'll start playing it through, and you'll notice that these rain chances start to increase a bit. This is just about 9 o'clock, and we're looking at a few of those storms really starting to fire up. Now, I said this on TV earlier, but I really want to emphasize the models are not going to show you the exact location of where these storms are with this type of weather setup. It's more so just telling us we're going to have storms start to flare up probably after sunset sometime, as what's known as the low-level jet starts to get kicking. Those strong winds just above the surface help to surge in moisture, and so that's when we'll start to see these storms fire up. And these could be strong to severe. I know I've been talking a lot about the expectation for Monday, but even the storms this evening after 7 or 8 have the potential to bring very heavy rain, gusty winds, and an isolated tornado risk. If these storms stay very isolated, which I do anticipate, they have a better chance of just tapping into the environment themselves. So if you have any evening plans, be sure to have the WCTV First Alert weather app downloaded. It'll let you know if any warnings or watches are issued. It wouldn't be wild, and I wouldn't be shocked if we end up under a tornado watch this evening or a severe thunderstorm watch, probably a tornado watch. That doesn't mean the tornado risk is imminent, but the tornado watch means that we're watching the threat closely. Talk a bit more about that in just a minute, but I wouldn't be shocked if we were under a watch later this evening because of the isolated tornado risk, and especially those in Alabama. This is the latest run. This is our graph model, which is our in-house high-resolution computer model. And you can see 5 o'clock, still some ongoing storms across the eastern Big Bend close to I-75, points like Jasper, Statenville to Homerville and Valdosta. But then we're starting to focus our attention in the western Big Bend. This is what the Storm Prediction Center was watching for, the tornado risk across southeast Alabama and northern Florida in the peninsula there. These storms are going to have an opportunity to tap into twisting winds in the atmosphere, and so that's why the Storm Prediction Center was watching this area for tornadoes early in the morning. I'll keep my eyes on it. Notice as these storms progress, they're not quite as huge, But what I am noticing is we've got these individual cells. Again, don't get caught up in the exact location of these storms. The important thing to take away from this is we're at about 7 to 8 o'clock. This is 6:45 on the timestamp here, but I'm saying in general, 7 to 8 o'clock, we'll see storms blossom across the area, and that's when a lot of folks are either heading to school or work. I do know some folks don't have school next week, which is certainly good news for parents with this severe weather risk, but some folks, especially I know in South Georgia, do have school still tomorrow, so be sure you're checking the radar and checking in with WCTV tomorrow morning, because any of these storms will have a possibility of being severe, and because of the fact that they're discrete or away from each other, they have a tendency to be able to rotate as well. I do think by the time we get to 9 o'clock, those individual cells will start to congeal into a line. We'll still see individual cells ahead of this main line in the eastern Big Bend, which could also pose a tornado risk. But then once this line congeals, again, this is 9 o'clock, we'll start to see a transition from a tornado risk to a damaging wind risk. And do notice that the line is a bit more solid across South Georgia and breaks up into the Big Bend here. Don't, again, take that as gospel either. What is going to happen is these storms will congeal into a line at some point somewhere in the Big Bend in South Georgia, and there will be some broken cells too, and there might be a spot or two that don't see a drop of rain. That's why I have a 90% chance instead of an 80. So again, this is 9 o'clock, areas like Cairo, Thomasville, Midway, Tallahassee, Quincy, Crawfordville, Sumatra, all looking at that opportunity for storms around 9 o'clock. That's the main line, but even storms start before that. Now we're at 11 o'clock. The straggling showers are not going to be a severe problem. The severe risk now, by the time we get to 11 o'clock, is going to be for the eastern Big Bend. So Madison, Live Oak, Perry, Statenville, Jasper to Homerville. And then once we pass, I think, 1 o'clock, a lot of the storms are out of our area, and then we start to dry things out. So here's a breakdown of the timeline. At the top, you see the colors that indicate the time. So the light orange, the peach, 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. is the time frame for Monday's storms. So if you're in Marianna, if you're in Hosford, if you're in Quincy, Bainbridge, Donaldsonville, Blakely, Colquitt, Milford, the timing there looks to be between 5 and 8 a.m. If you're watching me in Cairo, Camilla, Thomasville, Moultrie, Quitman, Lloyd, Jefferson County, not Jeffersonville, Jefferson County, Monticello, that's what I'm thinking, Tallahassee, Woodville, Crawfordville, Apalachicola, East Point, St. Marks, and St. George Island, you're looking at a time frame of 7 to 10. That's the middle orange color. In the dark orange color, again, this has nothing to do with intensity. This is just the timeline. For Valdosta, Madison, Perry, Mayo, Live Oak, Jasper, Statenville, Adel, Lakeland, and Homerville, we're looking at a timing of around 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So hopefully that timing, both the Futurecast and this graphic, helps break down the timing for your hometown. Now, as far as the severe weather risk is concerned, these are the threats we're looking at. A few tornadoes are going to be possible. Hail up to quarter size is going to be possible because of the cold air in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Because these storms are fairly quick moving and they're not going to really stay in the same place, hence quick moving, flooding risk is very low. And rain totals are not going to be very significant out of these storms either, probably a ½ inch at most, which is not going to do anything for the drought. I think wind gusts are going to be the biggest concern with these storms on top of the tornado risk. We're kind of headed toward that moderate. With the latest discussion this morning, Storm Prediction Center mentioning that wind gusts could get as high as 70 miles per hour. And I'm not shocked given the upper level winds ahead of this. So 50 to 70 mile per hour gusts with the strongest storms. Not everyone sees a gust of 70 miles per hour, but I think a lot of folks do see anywhere between 40 and 50 mile per hour gusts with some of the strongest storms bringing hail, winds to 70 miles per hour, and again, a tornado not out of the question. I do want to focus in on that tornado risk just to kind of put your mind at ease a little bit. I'll actually start off with the wider view here. So the upper Mississippi River Valley there, areas like Memphis, you're kind of in this yellow shade. That's where the more significant tornado risk is expected to be today. A 10% chance of a tornado within 25 miles, which when you compare to climatology is a significant risk. And that's what this yellow shade is here too. The level 3 risk out of 7 in a tornado. That's a 10% chance of a tornado developing within any point in this shade within 25 miles. And again, notice that that kind of clips our area, which is why I wanted to jump on here and talk about, yeah, there's a tornado risk. The highest risk is going to be to our west and to our north. So when we're waking up on Monday morning, there is probably going to be a tornado watch. There are probably going to be a couple of tornado warnings in South Alabama. And it's going to look rather frightening as these storms approach our area. We hope that the Storm Prediction Center is kind of in line with this, where the general weakening trend is expected. There always seems to be, as these storms go from southeast Alabama to the eastern Big Bend, a temporary weakening trend before it flares up again. So we'll see what happens. Again, I think the highest tornado risk is going to be just off to our west. That's the yellow shade here. Also, you notice the lines, that's a hatching. That just means there is a possibility of a higher possibility of tornadoes. They've changed it this year though, so now they have significant and level 1 and significant level 2, and this is just significant level 1, which means if a tornado does develop, we could be looking at a strong tornado. But the green shade tells me that it's going to be 1 or maybe 2 tornadoes. The coverage of tornadoes is going to be less in our area than in southeast Alabama. I hope that makes sense to you. Now, the tornado risk really increases as we head into your Monday for folks to our north. Again, extending from Raleigh to DC, we're in a 5% tornado risk on Monday, which again is pretty similar to our Sunday risk, which you can see here, the brown risk, or actually the green risk tomorrow early morning, but then changing over to a higher risk Monday morning. So this evening is a lesser of a tornado risk than tomorrow for most of the Big Bend. The exception is going to be South Georgia. Now, it's important to know tornado safety. Just wanted to go over this pretty briefly. It is important to obviously be in the interior most part of your home. Avoid windows, doors, outside walls. A bathroom is a great place, especially if it's in the interior of your home. A closet, a stairwell, or an interior hall. I know that's what a lot of children do when at school. Obviously, you don't want to be outside. The best place to be is a basement, but I know many folks here don't have basements because we're so low at sea level in the Big Bend in South Georgia. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. Outside of the storms, it is going to be a breezy day tomorrow. We're talking winds between 20 and even 25 miles per hour when you look at those gusts. So it's going to be choppy on those waters too. If you're hoping to get out boating, definitely not a good day to do that tomorrow. Today is going to be the better of the day to do that. Water temperature at 70 degrees, partly sunny, temperatures in the 70s, south wind 5 to 15 knots as of right now, waves a foot or less, and those bays light to moderate chop. And for your Monday, beach and boating conditions certainly much less ideal. Just wanted to throw that out there because I know there's a lot of beachgoers and boaters around the Big Bend in South Georgia. So just wanted to break that down for you. So again, we are tracking the risk for some stronger storms. Level 2 risk is in place for the Big Bend in South Georgia. Level 3 risk this evening just to our west. I'm really focused on the storms between 5 a.m. and 1 p.m. that are going to bring the possibility of strong winds between 50 and 70 miles per hour. Again, most of us don't see winds that intense, but the most intense storms will reach that. And a few tornadoes not out of the question, plus hail up to quarter size because of the cold air in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Impacts, this is a big one. We had power outages with Thursday's storm for some folks. I think there are going to be more outages again tomorrow with this setup, maybe some damage to trees, power lines, and of course your morning commute on Monday is going to be impacted as well because of the storms rolling through. But then check out how things change. And they change dramatically after this cold front moves through. Tuesday morning, we're waking up to numbers in the mid-30s. So frost is going to be expected on St. Patrick's Day, only 58 for the high. More frost and possibly a light freeze, especially in South Georgia on Wednesday morning, 65. And then another night in the 30s, probably Thursday morning before we climb into the 70s by the afternoon. Mostly sunny. High pressure starts to be the real dominating weather feature next week and back into the 80s next weekend. Again, you look at this, and of course we need the rain. We are getting it with a severe weather risk. But then you look at next week with the minimal rain we get with this storm system and a week of dry, we're going to be talking about the drought again and getting worse and worse, especially after 2 mornings of a frost, possibly a freeze on Wednesday morning. It's only going to make the soil worse, the ground worse for the farmers across the area. So if you're watching, if you're a farmer, I'm thinking about you. It certainly looks like this drought situation's only getting worse. So we'll continue to hope for better rain chances. Of course, the rainy season is right around the corner. But that being said, did want to just break down the severe weather risk we have for this evening and tomorrow. First alert weather day is in place. That's the flashing red you see on the 7-day forecast. And that's because of the severe weather risk this evening into tomorrow morning. Cameron is going to be here later today to break down more of this. Of course, I'll be in for Rob tomorrow morning on the Good Morning Show. And when the warnings pop, I'll be watching the radar as well. So that's just kind of the bottom line with this. I do want to scroll through Facebook real quick just to see if anyone had any comments about any stuff going on. So I'm going to scroll through comments here. Good morning, Margaret. Thanks for joining. Good to hear from you. Casper, what are the components for the new enhanced upgrade in our area? Casper, so we're getting a bit of influx of moisture. And so when you have deeper moisture or higher dew points, what that is going to do is that's going to enhance that low-level instability and obviously lower the cloud bases too when you have more moisture to work with. We were a little bit unsure at first how the moisture return was going to work, but this wide open warm sector has allowed us to kind of slug that in. It's going to start to noticeably feel more muggy throughout the day, so that's why the new enhanced upgrade was issued for our area. Glenn, Howell, Michigan says you're doing a good job. Hey, hometown. Love to hear that, Glenn. Thanks for checking in. I'm seeing a couple of comments here about timing. I know Margaret asking about Pelham and Moultrie. I'll get to the timing one more time to go over that. Christina says, so for that pop-up coming Tallahassee around 9 tonight, there's a good chance of a tornado. I wouldn't say it's a good chance of a tornado. I think that the tornado risk this evening is relatively low, but it's not zero. And it's one that I think is worth paying attention to. Beth asks about the timing this evening. We're talking about any time after 7 or 8 o'clock this evening. So after dinner time is probably the best chance for any severe weather this evening. And it's going to be a lot more spotty this evening than it will be tomorrow. Legine, of course, watching from Bainbridge. Good to hear from you today. Betrinda asks, is this cold the last before Easter? I sure hope so. It does look like a warming trend follows behind this. Sandra says, thank you for the weather updates, of course. Good morning to you as well. And Josh joining from Quincy. Hope you're doing well this morning, Josh. That's all on my Facebook page. Let me just switch over to WCTV Facebook page and be sure that no one else is asking questions, and then I'll go back over the timing in just a moment. But, for those who are enjoying the weather today or the last couple of days, okay, I don't see any comments on the WCTV page. So we'll switch over to the timing here. And bear with me as the graphics just decided to crash on me, so we're in the midst of getting those back up. But you can see the cold arriving pretty quickly. Monday's high is 71. Temps are going to be falling throughout the day. So by the afternoon on Monday, a lot of us are going to be sitting in the 50s. So Monday afternoon is going to be cold. I would grab the jackets as you're heading out about Monday. Obviously the raincoats, but also the coats to keep yourself warm too, because it's going to be a lot cooler Monday afternoon. Okay, so here's the timing a lot of folks were asking about. And I know your specific city might not be on here, but for folks in the western Big Bend, we're talking about timing that is between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. And what I had mentioned before with this that's important is these colors are just pointing out the times. They're not pointing out intensity. I know when you see darker colors, oftentimes, you wonder, does that mean that weather is going to be worse there? No, not necessarily. Again, it's just denoting the different times. I felt like breaking up the colors was going to be the easiest way to kind of delineate or differentiate the storm timing. So I'm going to name off as many cities as I can here for you. So let's go to the 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. time frame across the western Big Bend. So if you're watching me from Blakely, if you're watching me from Colquitt, if you're watching me from Donaldsonville, Brinson, Chattahoochee, Greensboro, Mount Pleasant, Gretna, Shady Grove, Bluntstown, Weewahitchka, Mexico Beach, Hosford, Bainbridge, Colquitt, Damascus, we're looking at a timing of 5 to 8 o'clock. For 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., sometime between that time range, we're looking at storms to impact Cairo, Climax, Wingham, Attapulgis, Tallahassee, Crawfordville, St. Mark's, Sopchoppy, Panacea, East Point, St. George Island, Monticello, Thomasville, Moultrie, Boston, Lloyd, Quitman, Camilla, Thomasville, Ocklawahnee, Pelham, Pavo, Coolidge, Murphy, Barwick, Lamont, Caps, Lloyd, Monticello. So those are the cities we're talking 7 to 10 a.m. 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., we're now talking about Cherry Lake, Madison, Lee, Greenville, Blue Springs, Falmouth, Suwanee, Live Oak, Mayo, Brantford, Wellborn, White Springs, Jasper, Statenville, Dasher, Mayday, Homerville, Lakeland, Bemis, Hayhira, Adel, Nashville, Perry. Steinhatchee, Cross City, and Keaton Beach. So those are the cities, those are the timing, and I'll show you the hour-by-hour look one more time too. And you'll see the Futurecast through the rest of this afternoon is pretty quiet. So as you have your afternoon plans, everything's going to be okay, all right? Won't have to worry about the bad weather. After about 8 o'clock, if you have late evening plans, be sure that your WCTV First Alert weather app is working. Be sure that it has alerts on. I'll try to do a Facebook post about how to do that later on. That way you can see. But again, be sure your alerts are on because some of these storms will pop after you head to bed. So here's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. We're starting to see these storms pop, especially to our west, close to I-75, and then in the Panhandle, Destin, Panama City. These storms have a tendency to want to be strong. Notice this is the new update, and it still shows strong storms, but not as intense. Again, the idea is not the location, but that they're going to be very spotty in nature. Most of us don't see rain tonight. Most of us will see the rain tomorrow. That's when the most intense storms are going to be. This new run is a bit interesting, though. If we get these storms going at 3 o'clock in the eastern Big Bend, these are going to have a possibility of being strong, too, around the Live Oak, Perry, Mayo area, and Woodville, Monticello. We'll have to watch those closely into the overnight. But then I think, again, the main show, the big storms, probably start to move in again as early as 5 o'clock for our western Big Bend. And then we'll see the storms continue to blossom and increasing coverage through the morning, certainly impacting our morning drive. So this is the latest run, and it actually does a pretty good job thinking what I was anticipating earlier is those isolated storms congealing into a line. 11 o'clock, we're talking Valdosta, Madison, Perry, Live Oak, Mayo, Statenville, Jasper. And by the time we get to 1 o'clock, the storms are gone. So that's good news. Again, that's the reason why Storm Prediction Center has a level 2 risk in place for us tomorrow. We also have a level 2 risk in place for most of the western Big Bend for this evening. It's one of those days where it's going to be important to obviously download the free WCTV First Alert weather app, but also note the difference between a watch and a warning. Watch means conditions are favorable for severe thunderstorm or tornadoes, while a warning means a tornado or severe thunderstorm is occurring or about to occur. So watch means we're watching the conditions evolve, and a warning means the threat is imminent or occurring. And again, after these storms move through, we've got a big time cool down. We're talking frost on Tuesday and Wednesday morning, cool afternoons. Monday, temps are going to be dropping from the 70s to 50s. Let me pull that up real quick so you can see how temperatures drop. So obviously 80s today. As you're waking up on Monday morning, a lot of folks are near the 70-degree mark, already 50s in Dothan. But here's 11 o'clock. Big divide of temps. If you're watching in Lafayette, Suwannee County, Hamilton, Eccles, you're going to be in the mid-70s around 11 o'clock before the storms arrive. Meanwhile, Mariana, Bainbridge in the 50s. So it's going to be super split with those temps tomorrow morning. And then by the afternoon, a lot of us will be dropping into the 50s by the evening hours. So it's going to be feeling cold. And when you factor in the wind tomorrow, it is going to be feeling even cooler. Here's your next 24 hours. The bottom number on the screen is going to show you the feels like number, and that is not going to do us any good because it's the next 24 hours. This is what I was looking for. Tomorrow, so you can see by 5 p.m., 58 degrees, feeling like 54 after the morning storms roll through. So you get the idea. It's going to be much cooler as we head into next week. One last thing I want to talk about, just for the farmers' sake. So we've got overnight frost this week. of course, frost early Tuesday and Wednesday. Even a freeze is going to be possible on Wednesday. The coldest hours are typically 2 to 3 hours before sunrise. So plan on a couple of hours of frost or even near freeze potential on Tuesday and Wednesday morning. Cover up the plants, the crops if you can. We're not really talking about we need to cover up the pipes kind of cold, but if you did plant anything outdoors recently, do keep that in mind. Bring the animals in if you can, and if you got livestock, cover them up or shelter them if you can as well. So this is just for the farmers outside of the frost or light freeze that we're going to be anticipating. Obviously, we've got the drought that's still in place. It's an extreme drought across North Florida and South Georgia. That likely is to persist even though we're getting the storms tomorrow, because check out these rain totals. They are not going to amount to much. We're lucky if we get a ½ inch of rain. Now, there could be a few folks that pick up more than an inch of rain, even more than a ½ inch of rain. It's all going to be dependent on where these thunderstorms set up. But most of us are only picking up about 1/4 to a ½ inch at most with the storms today. All right, one last look at your 7-day forecast before I let you go. We are looking at a first alert weather day in place for your Sunday evening into Monday because of the thunderstorm risk. Some of those storms will be strong to severe. Gusty winds between 50 and 70 miles per hour, not out of the question. A few tornadoes, not out of the question. And then obviously some hail too, with some pretty cold air in the upper levels of the atmosphere. All hazards are on the table, so be sure to have the free WCTV First Alert Weather app downloaded. Be sure to keep tuning in to us. I have on WCTV.tv written up an article that breaks down the severe weather risk for today. This video, if you missed it, missed the whole thing, the live stream, I'm going to post it. I'm also going to put it on my webpage too. That way you can watch through it in case you missed anything or you wanted to send it to a friend, family member who maybe doesn't have Facebook or missed our live stream. And that's that. So thank you for joining me on a special version of First Alert Daily as we are tracking the severe weather risk. Again, a First Alert Weather Day goes into effect this evening through our Monday morning. So be sure you're being careful with the Monday morning drive as outages are going to be possible, wind damage. Be sure all your devices are charged ahead of this storm. Thanks for joining me. I will keep tracking the weather for you. We'll have more updates later this evening, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning on the Good Morning Show. See ya.